Correspondent. My first guest tonight resigned from the NSA after a career spanning more than 3 decades protesting growing domestic surveillance. Joining us now is William Binney, former NSA employee and whistleblower. Good to have you with us. And I want to get first your reaction to Edward Snowden's most recent comments talking about hacking operations of the United States government. Clearly preferring to put his fate in the hands of Hong Kong rather than fellow Americans or our government.
Well, I don't really have privy knowledge, and so I'm not really privy to the hacking. That's the active attack system that is in place there in Fort Meade. So I couldn't really. I know they do it, but I don't know what the extent of it is.
You left the NSA in protest, really, over the decision by the government to conduct surveillance, seeking out terrorists after September 11th, 2001. You have seen, the history since. What are your thoughts now about these allegations and the extent, the sweep of if you will, of the surveillance that is taking place by the U.S. government?
Well, okay, from where I sit and what I've seen and what I've read so far and what I know, they're really attacking two communication systems, like the public switch telephone network that includes landlines, mobile phones, satellite phones. That's a worldwide system. And then also they're looking at the internet and the World Wide Web, which again is a worldwide system that is the IPv addresses, IPv4 and 6. So those are like phone numbers, if you will, or you can draw the analogy. And what they're doing is pulling in all that data, the metadata, to reconstruct the communities of interest, or if you will, the social networks of every individual in the world. And in particular, the reason I left, and one of the reasons I couldn't stay there for sure, was the fact that they were doing it to every U.S. citizen. I mean, my knowledge was that they were taking in about 320 million records of long-distance calls of U.S. citizens to other U.S. citizens every day. And that started in October of 2001. And that's why I could not be a part of that.
And the Patriot Act, which followed the authorization for the government to begin much of that surveillance, did that in any way allay your concerns?
No, because, again, the issue, Lou, is that what they can do, the capability with that metadata is to build the entire communities, like, for example, the Tea Party.
Right.
Would you like to reconstruct the Tea Party or the Occupy groups, and who is central to the Tea Party and who is peripheral and who's coming, and you can have the data about them, including getting their names, and if they apply for tax-exempt status, and you can check that list and see if they're on it and then target them if you want to. Right. That's the problem with it. That's the problem with the government having so much knowledge about the citizens of the country.
The knowledge about the citizens of the country versus the records of their communications, whether we go to Operation Prism and include emails, video, along with the phone calls and those voice communication. It is what you do with them. The storage in and of itself obviously deeply troubles you. Others say when it is in metadata form, if you will, you don't drill down unless you have probable cause and reason and great specificity. I hear you saying that that's an illusion.
There are two ways to produce intelligence about any target in the world. One is to read what they're saying and pay attention to it. That gives you intelligence. And the other is to build the metadata and see how they interact with one another. And when you do that and timeline that over a period of time, you can see who's doing what with whom and infer from just the interactions some of the activity that they're intending to do. For example, if you had a drug smuggler in Colombia that wanted to smuggle drugs in the United States, he'd have to communicate with someone in the United States in some form to arrange the sell and buy relationship. Then he'd have to arrange with somebody to transport it. Then he'd have to transfer the money and transfer the drugs. So those things have to happen. They show up as interactions in the metadata. And once you see them, you can infer that that's in fact what they're doing. So there's a lot of things you can do. You can look and see if you're having medical problems. You can see the medical doctors that you're visiting and making appointments with. So that, metadata is really pretty dangerous.